They don't make them like they used to, do they? It's a phrase that's thrown around, but it's not one without a truth within it. In regards of how films are made, of how they're perceived, in what cinema is now compared to what it was, then yes, they don't make them like they used to.
There's not a cut-off day for when used to begins and ends, but we're referring to the era of classic cinema. It's not an exact definition, but we know it when we see it. I love classic cinema so much. It's a time when storytelling was direct yet poetic, when images were both subtle and expressive, and when filmmakers operated with restrictions that became invitations to innovation.
Classic cinema isn't just a relic of a bygone age, it's something that we should fully entrench ourselves in, because so much of now appeared first within it. The tapestry of classic cinema is where one finds the DNA of modern films, the language of the camera, the movement of the edit, the sound of a time and place.
Classic filmmakers understood that cinema is not just about what is shown, but how is shown, because to them, cinema was just something more.
The beginning of the 20th century saw the birth of cinema in the public eye. The late 1800s was still an experiment, but a couple of decades later saw film fully fledged into an art form, into the art form. For all intents and purposes, cinema was the peak synthesis of art with technology. And like any technological shift in society, it's treated no differently than magic.
And this is something that should be addressed when acknowledging cinema of the past. Our innate relationship with moving images was just different.
The act of being in the cinema was something special, and it's not just that it was done through manipulative means, it was treated with reverence. You can see it just from how the films begin. They have gratitude, they have care. They present their credits at the opening, oftentimes with a message to the viewer about the experience that they're about to have, something lovingly crafted, and their sincerity of what they hope the film would achieve.
The tactility of this romanticized view is something that would become artificial with the work of someone like Wes Anderson. However, what people must remember is that the biggest inspiration for this artificiality was in fact the deep sincerity of this lost era, where sentimentality and integrity reigned supreme.
One of the cornerstones of classic cinema, particularly post-war, was the emergence of a kind of moral cinema. The world being exposed to a devastation the likes it had never witnessed, it seemed almost inevitable that cinema would respond to this. The Grapes of Wrath took justice for the common man to the big screen in a pledge to help the needy. These works were beautiful, but they were sincere.
Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there.
It's very easy for films to put forth a moral stance to come across as preaching or even dismissive of alternative approaches. Yet, this is rarely the case in classic cinema. Why is this so? Well, because while filmmakers aim to explore the difficult questions of humanity, it was rarely expressed to diminish a group of people that thought otherwise.
Paths of Glory, The Burmese Harp. These were just some of the films that proposed the complexity of the human condition in a post-war world to hopefully find a way through it. In Judgment at Nuremberg, we're presented with a film that's willing to find the complexities of that which would be considered unjustifiable, whether the judges who sanctioned the deaths of thousands in Nazi Germany were guilty for their actions. And yet, the film finds a way to make us doubt and question.
I swear that I shall be obedient to the leader of the German Russian people, Adolf Hitler, that I shall be loyal to him, that I will observe the laws, and that I will conscientiously fulfill my duties, so help me God.
Everyone swore to it. It was mandatory.
How does it do this? Because the core of cinema spoke of the soul of people. The questions we wanted to ask were towards the universality of people, all people. Morality isn't black and white, and in the era of classic cinema, everyone is given a chance to put forth their humanity.
Is he trying to prove that the German people as a whole were responsible for these events? Or that they were even aware of them? Because if he is, he's not stating facts.
The obvious comparison comes in 12 Angry Men, in which the crux of the story is a moral tale. How can we as humans completely disregard any individual when we take into account their humanity?
And yet, although they operate first and foremost as humanist tales, their care and attention for the human condition was woven masterfully into stories of high drama. It was never forgotten that these works were things that were supposed to be enjoyed by people. Serious art was not all about the dour, even when dealing with harsh subjects. It was about that which could shine through it. It wasn't just about telling a humanist tale. It was about how can we imagetically and narratively tell this humanist tale in the most interesting way.
12 Angry Men has a moment in which the jurors shun one of the members, who begins to display an intense bigotry, and their response is shown in a spectacularly powerful fashion.
This kid is a liar, I know it, I know all about them. Listen to me. They're no good. There's not a one of them who's any good. I mean, what's happening in here?
And when it comes to shooting for drama in a single room, Judgment at Nuremberg may be the blueprint for how to do it. I don't think I've seen a work in a single area be able to perfect framing and blocking for such a static film. It's the film language that imbues it with such energy and urgency. But it must be said, those great screenplays are what stood as the crux of so many great films of classic cinema.
Thrillers were central to them, and it's even why so many great courtroom dramas were created during the period. Anatomy of a Murder was a film that for the time the graphic detail of how the crime was perpetrated made many viewers outraged.
And witness for the prosecution was so good that the end of the film had a message for the audience for them not to tell anyone what happens in the film as not to spoil it.
The management of this theater suggests that for the greater entertainment of your friends who have not yet seen the picture, you will not divulge to anyone the secret of the ending of witness for the prosecution.
And so I'll do just that. One of the advantages that the structure of the film industry had during the classical era compared to now was its reliance on the screenwriter. For a long time, the biggest names behind the scenes were most often the writers, but you can see why. These films grit you. They deal with stories that, isolated on their own away from the visual medium, are just as captivating. Returning to classic cinema, the first thing I end up asking is why don't people write plots anymore? Cause and effect, misdirection, things that the Maltese Falcon does without even trying.
You and your stupid attempt to buy it! Canada found out how valuable it was. No wonder we had such an easy time stealing it, you imbecile, you bloated idiot!
And of course, we can't talk about writing in film without at least mentioning Billy Wilder. Sunset Boulevard is one of the great American films, a work that cuts so deeply into the Hollywood myth that silent stars at its premiere reportedly recognized themselves in its characters.
And let's see how this film begins, by the way. A body is floating face down in a swimming pool. Police gather around the crime scene. And then there's the "let me tell you how I got here" introduction, a narration from beyond the grave.
Wilder frames the shot from beneath the water, looking up through the shimmering surface at the lifeless body and the flashing lights above. It's not just visually arresting, it's thematically exact.
That underwater perspective strips away any shred of glamour and replaces it with irony. Hollywood, at this moment, isn't a dream factory, but a mausoleum of ambition and delusion. At its centre is Norma Desmond, once a silent screen star who now decays into a self-imposed myth.
You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Norma's bridge partners are the actual silent stars Buster Keaton, Anna Q. Nilsson, and H.B. Warner. And when DeMille calls Norma little fellow, it's not just a line, it's what he actually called her in real life. It took the Hollywood idealism and did with it something profane. Because what we must never forget about the old guard of this mighty era is that they were obsessively creative.
everyone should still be watching Casablanca, because it is absolutely foundational to the fundamental ideas of what a screenplay needs to be. It's perfect. How to introduce a location, the balance of characters and their interplay, all the elements are symbiotic with one another and display the peak of formalist structure. But this wasn't all film was made up of, because even within this formalism came room for experimentation.
At the heights of his career, Hitchcock makes Vertigo, a film of unbelievable depth in the understanding of human psychology and sexuality. A gorgeous colour palette washes over the film as we sink into the spiralling story, both narratively and imagetically. And when it comes to originality, it's impossible not to talk about Hitchcock. Even in a classically formalist film for the time, Rebecca, Hitchcock transforms the domestic space into a menace.
This isn't a house haunted by a ghost, it's haunted by memory. Every frame is carefully composed like a painting. Hitchcock uses that same blend of visual poetry and psychological insight to layer his dread through atmosphere and suggestion. The camera lingers on empty rooms, on objects laden with meaning. A faded photograph, a locked door. Each one is a silent witness to the secrets that suffocate Manderley. Where the true horror is the feeling that the past is never really gone, but waiting patiently to reclaim its place.
But if we really want to talk about mastery of the classic form, I think in Shadow of a Doubt, Hitchcock exceeds even himself.
You see them in the hotels, the best hotels every day by the thousands. Drinking the money, eating the money, losing the money at bridge, playing all day and all night, smelling of money. Proud of their jewelry, but of nothing else. Horrible.
He turns the idealized suburban home into a breeding ground for evil, a place where darkness lurks beneath the surface of everyday life. The arrival of this menace depicted by the billowing black smoke on a clear day. The suspense isn't in sudden shocks or frantic action, it's in the unbearable weight, the silent ticking clock of impending doom that Hitchcock stretches to its breaking point. And that feel is integral to classic cinema, and it's the perfect display for how every piece of the mise-en-scène had the capacity to be something new and powerful.
Color was given new meaning in the work of Powell and Pressburger, who employed their own manifesto to ensure that their films prioritize originality over all else. They wanted their work to come from as little influence as possible, which is why in The Red Shoes, a majestic and ostentatious ballet sequence plays uninterrupted to dazzle the viewer with spectacle.
The playing of colour itself to differentiate the worlds in A Matter of Life and Death, even using jump cuts and other creative editing to form the biopic of a fictional war hero in The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp.
Fritz Lang's M exists on the cusp of sound cinema, yet it wields silence with an even more haunting precision than many films that came after. Peter Lorre's portrayal of the child murderer is chilling not only for its menace, but for its vulnerability, managing equal parts monster and pity.
And again, this comes from Fritz Lang's refusal to offer the audience the comfort of clear moral lines. Here, the hunt for justice blurs into a collective paranoia, with the city itself becoming a shadowy maze where danger lurks in every corner. The horror in M isn't driven by spectacle, but by the creeping realization that evil can hide in plain sight. The silence isn't empty, it's loaded.
Du hast aber einen schönen Ball.
Even the framing feels accusatory. It's not just the murderer on trial, but society itself.
And contrast this with Diary of a Country Priest, where Bresson also uses silence, but to a completely different effect. Bresson's camera doesn't search for beauty. It records suffering with a kind of holy indifference. His frames are sparse, almost monastic, devoid of visual distraction. Performances are pared down to their most elemental form. Gestures are minimal, voice is flat. They have that solemn, quasi-medieval painting quality. We watch a man try to reconcile his suffering with his faith, his sense of insignificance with his duty.
Bresson owes something profound to the era that came before him. The silent era wasn't primitive, it was pure. It forced filmmakers to distill emotion, to express ideas through composition, movement, and montage. Without dialogue to fall back on, every image had to mean something. Look at the haunted expressions of René Falconetti in The Passion of Joan of Arc, or the poetic dream logic of Murnau's Sunrise.
These were films that didn't just tell stories, they evoked states of being. And when sound arrived, it expanded the palette. But some of that precision was lost. But the best filmmakers never forgot those lessons. Bresson, in his own way, carried them like gospel through his own filmmaking identity.
There's a style from back then. A style of acting, a style of pace, the way people walk, the way they talk. Perhaps we've sacrificed that for a more realist approach, but it was that small degree of artifice, that you have people that know exactly what to say and when to say it, that we were willing to suspend our disbelief when the result is a great character. The Sweet Smell of Success is a film that signifies the shift into New Hollywood, all the while remaining steadfast inside classic cinema. The dialogue is sharp, every line plucked perfectly, so that each character doesn't speak like a real person, they speak like the perfected version of whatever archetype they're portraying.
Mr. Falco, whom I did not invite to sit at this table tonight, is a hungry press agent, and fully up to all the tricks of his very slimy trade. Match me, Sidney.
Not right this minute, JJ.
The genre of film noir several years prior to this was perhaps the apotheosis of this brand of filmmaking, where character and plot were defined by their tropes and archetypes, but what it results in is a razor-sharp world of coolness and danger, that in many ways, by the characters being more idealized, they represent something more human. They represent the exaggerated edges of the human condition, and it's oftentimes why they resonate with us even more, even if we don't directly relate with the circumstances.
And this mood, it drinks from the same energy as Double Indemnity, a film that doesn't just flirt with darkness, it drinks it straight. Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck don't speak so much as spar.
You planned the whole thing. I only wanted him dead.
And I'm the one that fixed it so he was dead. Is that what you're telling me?
And nobody's pulling out. We went into this together and we're coming out at the end together. It's straight down the line for both of us.
The plot unfolds with the grim inevitability of a Greek tragedy, and we know from the start where this is headed, and so do they, but that doesn't stop them. If anything, it excites them, and it excites us.
Wilder isn't just making a movie about murder for money, he's dissecting the way people talk themselves into sin. They don't make films like this anymore, where the shadow of subject and audience are laid out for all to see.
We're both rotten.
Only you're a little more rotten. You got me to take care of your husband for you. And then you get Zacchetti to take care of Lola. Maybe take care of me, too. Then somebody else would have come along to take care of Zacchetti for you. That's the way you operate, isn't it, baby?
Suppose it is. Is what you've got cooked up for tonight any better?
And it's that same sense of precision and fatalism that pulses through a film like Rafifi. The nearly wordless heist sequence isn't just a set piece, it's a meditation on film craft. It's so tense, so daring, that it feels almost illicit to watch. We too are accomplices, holding our breath in the dark. Dasson's camera is patient and reverent, capturing the minutiae of criminal artistry with a precision that borders on worship. It's a masterclass in tension and cinematic rhythm, where suspense isn't born from music or dialogue, but from silence and the pure, uncut language of image and action. But my god, that sharpness was in everything. Edith Head was dressing people for decades in the most stunning attire you can imagine. And these people were fucking sharp in every sense of the word. The wit that emerged in this era is dry, suave, and ingenious. For my money, Ernst Lubitsch was the perfect comedic director, yet to be surpassed. To Be or Not to Be still remains the greatest comedy of all time, bolstered by the idiosyncratic Lubitsch touch, a subversion of expectation that leads to hysterical laughter. It's like his attempts at fusing humour with social faux pas and sexual innuendo are so effortless because you expect one thing and always get something better.
No, this man's an imposter. Are you crazy? He is Professor Siletsky.
Well, what do you have to say for yourself now? Here is a man with a beard.
Trouble in Paradise follows two thieves attempting to rob one another, unaware that the other is a thief. I mean, what's not to enjoy about that? That's funny already. And the thing is, so many of these films were bogged down with the fluff that a lot of modern film is crammed with. Of course, context always helps understand the film, but with no context at all, these films can be enjoyed by anyone, anywhere.
Kind Hearts and Coronets shows a man in an attempt to claim his family's fortune assassinate the 8 family members of the lineage that stand in his way, all of whom happen to be played by Alec Guinness.
Because classic cinema doesn't just delight when it's precise or calculated, it also delights through this unpretentious showcase of life. Take one of my favorite romantic comedies, Roman Holiday. The Vespa Ride, The Quiet Confessions, there's no need for convoluted plot twists or grand romantic speeches. Instead, it trusts that chemistry and setting can do the heavy lifting.
Films like these are built almost entirely on their charm, much like Bringing Up Baby. The reason we remember them, why we think they are as good as they are, is nothing more than their infectious charisma.
Oh, look, David, I lost my heel. I lost my heel. Look at me walk.
Susan!
On the side of a hill.
Susan, stop!
I was born on the side of a hill.
Susan, stop! No. Oh.
But to talk about charm, I have to mention the kinetic energy of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, especially in Top Hat, where dance isn't just movement, it's dialogue. Their bodies speak in syncopation, flirtation, and grace, expressing more in a tap sequence than most films manage in a full screenplay. They didn't just dance together, they floated through fantasy. Theirs was a world where misunderstanding melted into music, where emotional tension resolved in the soft landing of a heel turning to meet its partner. What's remarkable is how effortlessly the film integrates musicality into the grammar of cinema. Numbers don't interrupt the story, they are the story. And it's hard not to be overwhelmed with a nostalgia for a time not lived when I watch Fred Astaire. Or even something like Stormy Weather. I mean, the Nicholas Brothers routine isn't just a showcase of virtuosity, it's choreography pushed to its cinematic limits. The editing is clean, unobtrusive, the camera keeps its distance, allowing the sheer athleticism and spatial ingenuity of the number to speak for itself. I mean, you have Cab Calloway, what else do you really need?
Another film that allows for a different kind of dance, of movement itself to breathe, is Children of Paradise. It's a towering achievement in cinematic composition and emotional complexity. Jean-Louis Barrault as the mime Baptiste gives a performance that feels carved from longing. His physicality is hypnotic. Every gesture, every pause, every tilt of the head speaks volumes. The mime sequences aren't interludes, they're windows into the inner life of a man who can express everything except what he truly feels.
The film staging is meticulous, the compositions painterly. Actors frame against rich layers of costume, architecture, and crowd, each element contributing to a sense of orchestrated chaos and private sorrow. This is cinema that luxuriates in detail without losing sight of the character's profound emotional stakes.
They don't make them like they used to. Classic cinema wasn't just about the genres and tropes that people often deride it for so much. It was home to filmmaking that was so ingenious, so different that it became the standard. Citizen Kane has been spoken of for decades since its release, and for good reason. Its understanding of the language of cinema was so deep that it influenced the rest of cinema forever. But how could it not? Look at it. It's beautiful. And this is the thing. Not only were these works based around ingenuity, they were also aesthetic achievements just in visual beauty. Look at a shot from something like Wings, and not only are you seeing something which hadn't been done, and is still difficult to do now, but it looks fantastic, and it communicates so much to us. Most modern cinematography seems to choose one over the other. Yes, things can look very pretty and clean now, but they do so to sacrifice the storytelling of the image. Although the colours may be crisp and the image sharp, you should always ask why those decisions were made. In classical cinema, this is rarely the case. Of course, we have the tropes of dream sequences, showing a kind of wobbling effect as one drifts in and out of reality. You have the softness of the lens when showing a close-up of the female lead. But you don't really need to ask why these decisions were made. You get it right away. I mean, The Third Man is just one of the most incredible looking films I've ever seen. I don't think I've seen a city shot with such personality. The shadows and light create this geometric labyrinth where everything stretches off further than it should, and the tilted angles of the camera make us lose our sense of where we even are. This feat of filmmaking disorienting the viewer, while at the same time creating a world that you long to be uncovered. It really feels like a place that's hiding secrets from you.
And all of this without even mentioning the other masterpieces of world cinema. Dreyer crafts a minimal and quiet serenity in his work that could only be described as sacred. Kurosawa develops the foundations for the great epic with his ever-kinetic energy. The list goes on and on. We can talk forever about our favorite filmmakers and eras, yet there is something to be said that the era of classic cinema just came with a different caliber.
But it's when you hear that swelling music when the film starts. It's Bernard Herrmann, Max Steiner, or Franz Waxman leading an orchestra. You watch the black and white photography from artists like Greg Toland or Robert Kraker. The quality across the board is undeniable.
What must be acknowledged within classic cinema is that there was an industry standard. Films, even the lesser films of the studio era, brought with them a fundamental understanding to the art of filmmaking.
But ultimately, when people say they don't make them like they used to, what is it exactly that they mean? What is the thing that isn't around anymore? Well, it's a combination of what we've said. It's not single to one. Although when combined, they do create something intangible, something everlasting that appears harder to find in the cinema of now. Brief Encounter is one of my favourite films of all time. The story of a woman falling in love with a stranger away from her husband is one of the most heart-wrenching and yet beautiful films you'll ever see. Amidst everything that we may mention, the key word I return to in classic cinema is beauty, however you would define that.
There's still time. If we control ourselves, behave like sensible human beings, there's still time.
Whether it's something universal, something human, aesthetically, cinema was something that was elevated, that took our stories and made them something more. And it's difficult to refute this when watching It's a Wonderful Life and seeing the ultimate redemption of a man who realizes that regardless of what strife we may feel, that life is worth living no matter what.
My mouth's bleeding, Bert! My mouth's bleeding! Zuzu's pedals! Zuzu! There they are! Bert! What do you know about that?
Meet Me in St. Louis speaks of a family's roots in their hometown, a place that they may have to let go of. We're asked, amongst the frivolity and musical technical mastery that we associate with family memories, how do we confront the bitterness that life too brings?
I wouldn't have said it, Esther, if I thought it would make you cry.
I've imagined you saying it thousands of times. And I always planned exactly how I'd act. I never planned to cry.
Max Ophuls' work drips with sentimentality, particularly Letters of an Unknown Woman, in which a man discovers the inner world of the woman who loved him, but only once it's too late. In turn, we see her apparition floating around him, as though she would only exist in his life as a faded memory.
I challenge anyone to delve into classic cinema and not be enthralled by it, to truly immerse yourself in its splendor and accept that this is a medium wherein the creatives behind it were trying their absolute hardest to create the greatest things they could.
It really was a thing of dreams, because it was approached with a dignity, as though cinema was something we had to respect, that it was more than just a pastime, more than just a mere addition to the world of media. It was the art of the 20th century.
And the reality is, if we emerge once more with that same reverence towards cinema, then this milieu of endless ingenuity and spirit will return, and maybe one day we'll look at the face of cinema and be able to say, they sure are making them like they used to. Thanks for watching this video, but before you go, I wanted to speak to you very quickly. Do you get value from what we're doing here? Or have you gotten value from any of the things that we've done here? The House of Tabula launched with the hope of creating a hub that focused on cinema and all facets of art and culture. Louisa and I are determined to deliver to you a plethora of insightful work, as well as create a space that we can look back on many years down the line as a place that people recognise as a bastion for real discourse within the art world, stuff that was actually worthwhile. We're in a moment where art is being drowned out by noise, copyright claims, AI slop. At the House of Tabula, we're pushing against that tide. We create essays and experiences meant to last and to be revisited 10, 20 plus years down the line. We don't do quick takes, we don't do clickbait. We build essays, archives, and conversations, not just for content, but for the next generation of thinkers, artists, and students to reference and learn from. But this stuff isn't forever. It's not destined that this will last. If we want it to, we need your help. If you've received insight or enjoyment from this video or any video that we've made over the last 10 years, then consider joining our Patreon. Our goal is to stay independent so that we can break free from ads and algorithms. Since we launched the House of Tabula, we've crafted an incredible community. We have an active Discord from people all over the world who treat it with the same energy as a thriving community that exists outside of the internet. This is a place where creative, passionate people have the room to be themselves and explore any idea with others who get it. We've organised our deep dive film clubs with weekly screenings of films curated by us. We have a monthly book club with 2 3-hour-long live discussions together. We have a weekly podcast, Acid is Bad for Business, and we also have a collection of exclusive essays and content, including sneak peeks at our own artistic projects. The House of Tabula isn't just about content. We're building something bigger. So if you do really care about creating a world for people who enjoy staying up late thinking about cinema, art, philosophy, and want to build something real together, then join our Patreon and we can make this possible. Thank you again for being here with us on this journey, and we'll see you next time.